Well, hello and welcome everyone. I'm here with Stephanie Cracknell here today, who lives in Maine in the US, and she is actually one of our course participants from back in, I was looking back from 2013 to 2015. I think you took almost every one of our courses before we had what's called the blueprint today, which kind of packages everything together. And you've just done amazing things in your career, and you always, since then, still been a great supporter of Bridging the Gap. And we have never really gotten to sit down and have a conversation. So I'm really excited to hear about all that. And thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So maybe take us back to kind of where you were at in your career before. I know you were in a different country and kind of, it looks like you were doing some business analysis, but kind of back in that 2011, 2012 range.
Gosh, I think I've been in that role since probably around 2003. That wasn't, especially in the UK, there wasn't really, if you told somebody you're a business analyst, it was like, okay, so you manage projects or something. And there wasn't really, like a job description for it per se at that point. So, I did an element of it and never knew really what it was. So I worked in IT, and it was, hey, there's needs. We need a new intranet. We need a new quality system. We need to revamp our website. So it was, how do you go about that? It's like, okay, so you're going through all the steps you normally would do, understanding what the problem is, understanding where they're trying to get to, understanding your audience and things like that. But there wasn't really a title for it. So I think I started doing that ages ago, and I really loved it. And I think once I was at a property company in London for about 8 years. And then that was at the point where it was kind of gelling, and people were understanding that was a real job, and
and we have a real job, right?
Yeah. And it wasn't you work in IT. Oh, can you fix my laptop? So I had worked in for a commercial company for quite some time, and I was ready for a switch, and a business analyst job opened up at the Royal British Legion. It was the very first BA they'd ever had in 100 years of existence. So it was a chance to make the job my own, but also because I was kind of what you would call homegrown talent without any training in terms of this is a BA, because I didn't really, until then it wasn't really, didn't realize this was really a practice that was so widespread. And I'd gotten involved with the BCS, which is kind of the UK, the sort of governing body for, business analysis and things like that. And also the IIBA in London, had gotten involved with them as I realized that, I wanted to have my practice be something that was a bit more standard, and something that was, as you go to a new company, you could say, that you're doing it. And plus, I wanted to put in an element of rigor in the company that I was working for.
Yeah.
So at the Royal British Legion, I set up the BA practice there. But again, there's always this element of doubt. Am I doing it appropriately? Am I a fraud? Am I really, a business analyst? There's always that niggling.
And this is, you've been doing it for like 9 years, and you had that feeling. Yeah,
exactly. And I had taken a course or two with the BCS just towards the BA diploma. Again, to add in that element of rigor, they talked to me about managing other BAs and putting in the practice there at the Legion. So I wanted to make sure, again, it's that whole complex about, can I lead other BAs, and, am I really doing this the right way? So, I'd gone through that, and there's still that lingering doubt, even though I had led other BAs. And I reached out to you. I had been following you for quite some time, and you offered a lot of knowledge to BAs for free. And it was, this is how you do things. And there's articles about better ways to do. And I had been following you for quite some time. And I reached out to you about the time that I knew I was going to be moving back to the US. And then there was this, panic that, do they do things differently there? As if, there's no difference in language or whatever, but is there a difference in practice? So it was kind of freaked me out. And you actually helped me put my resume together in a way that, you give me a critique, and in one, how it would need to be fed in so people could read it, into their sort of auto feed, but also some advice on content. So I totally revamped my resume based on help from you. And I think when I got back to the US, I had a job within a week of getting to Denver. So obviously something worked. So, you know.
You also had, like, I feel like I want to just drill a little bit into that, like being the first BA in a company and feeling a little bit like, I think you said a fraud, right? Like there's that internal confidence that I think is so important. Like, yes, your resume was important, but your interviewing and how that confidence came through was also very important there. And what was it like being the first BA at a company?
It's exciting and daunting at the same time. It's, you know, I was excited about the fact that I could make the job my own, but you also feel that it's panic stations. It's like, oh my God, what is it? You know, what does a proper BA do? It's, you know, is there something that I'm not doing? Is there a skill that I don't have? Is there, you know, you can read all the books in the world that you want, but it's, you know, it's understanding, do I have the right skill set for it? You know. Again, I mean, even after sort of 8 odd years of doing it by that point, it was really understanding, am I using the right techniques? Is there, because if you go into the IIBA and look at the BA bot, for example, it can be very overwhelming for someone that is trying to get into a practice and put in an element of rigor within the company. So there's consistency in practice across what you do and what the other BAs do. So when they come in, they're not having to go through the same experiences that you are in terms of, you know, do we set up templates and things like that. And so that was, again, something I looked at of yours was, and I'm trying to think of the timing of it, but the templates were incredibly useful. One to have it, because again, it's, you know, there's certain things that you don't know what you don't know, and it's, you get ideas from that. And am I doing things appropriately? Okay, great. Here's a template. Sometimes it helps stop the panic in terms of, okay, good. Okay, this is kind of the information that I've been capturing, but here's in a format that makes a bit more sense. So you're able to kind of add that to your toolbox. Yeah. So yeah, it's both exciting and daunting at the same time to set up a practice.
And was that the point when you took the courses too? Was right when you were like in that first, like you were the first BA in this organization that wasn't used to BA. So like the coursework helped kind of give you that sense of confidence. Yeah.
It did really, because that's where you're, okay, is there something, you know, is there another way that I can be doing this? Is there another way I can be approaching it? And then especially with your training, there's kind of a real world scenario to it where you and another BA would work off one another. So you're kind of seeing that back and forth, and it's not, it's real world scenarios. So it's getting that kind of feedback from another person that you're seeing them back and forth, answering certain questions, whether it be elicitation or what have you, or if it's a particular technique. Yeah. So then
that's still part, like that's the part of the programs that is well, a lot of things are still the same, but that's become an even bigger part of our programs, is that back and forth with an instructor and helping people figure out, you know, how to apply it in their current world.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's invaluable.
Yeah. So take us into Denver then. So you said you found a job within a week. So you knew you were moving to Denver, like that was separate.
Yes.
And then it was like, what am I going to do here? Yeah.
Well,
and I remember some communication, like we had some because I was in Denver at the time.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that was just so bizarre. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm here. I'm like, oh, that was fantastic.
Yeah.
So it was about that time that I moved there, and you were actually working on your first book. That you shared with me, and I've since used that with other BAs at subsequent companies. But it was, you know, I was sort of panicked that, you know, there may be a different way of doing things, not that there's a different language or anything, but I know that the practice in terms of the IIBA when I was in London wasn't as prevalent as it is in the US. It is now, but it wasn't at that time. So, you know, I was kind of worried that maybe there are other things that I should be doing. And again, you know, as a BA, you always want to be learning. You know, I think we're naturally curious. We're, you know, always trying to make sure that we're getting new skill sets and learning new things just so we can offer better value to the people that we're working with. So that's kind of what I'd done when I'd taken some of your courses. And I think also I didn't have any Agile experience at that point either. So I know one of the courses I had taken, and I want to say is user stories, use cases, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
You then offered an Agile version as kind of after it, because Agile was a little bit more in use at that point, or probably quite a bit more pervasive in the US. So I then went back and did it. Because I'm like, all right, I don't have that experience in the company that I was working for. I was trying to get their Agile practice up and running. So I'm like, okay, great. Then I need to really, up my game there. Because then you're panicked. I'm like, okay, now I figured, I was a bit more comfortable in the old way of doing things in waterfall, and now we're Agile, and all of a sudden, it's scary. But so that's,
Yeah,
like, okay,
so that's a big thing that still comes up from people, I think, feeling like Agile is new or scary. Like, and I remember feeling that same way in my first Agile project. And then it's like you get into it and you're like, oh, but so much is still the same, right? Did you kind of get to that, or do you still feel like it was a very big departure?
It really depends on the kind of company that you work for. I mean, I worked for, I've been in financial services now for a number of years, and I think there's an element of rigor to the financial services practice and regulatory things that mean that there's more documentation than is standard with Agile. And I think that that's something that you'll never get away from. It's, you're having to keep your records for, between 7 to 10 years. And there has to be that kind of a paper trail. So I think that probably in that case, I don't like to say it's less Agile, but it is in a manner of speaking. You're running kind of a hybrid approach. So to me, that was less of a departure. So it wasn't as, okay, it's completely different. Now I'm working in completely Agile. And it's still financial services, so there's still a bit of documentation, but that's kind of an after the fact kind of thing, this is more standard. So and you realize then while financial services makes you sometimes document for document's sake, you realize just how less risky it is if you're, doing it appropriately. So thankfully we've gotten to that way now. Yes, absolutely.
And so you went from lead to manager there too. So were you setting up a new practice in this first company in Denver, or?
Well, when I first came to Denver, I worked for a nonprofit. I worked for Mercy Housing, and they had practice, but it was more the folks that worked there kind of were homegrown talent. So they came from somewhere else in the business. Again, kind of how I'd gone through my career. They'd come from somewhere else in the business, and they had an aptitude for it, and moved into a team and started, doing the job and having the title, and without kind of a rigor behind it in terms of, hey, this is how we're going to do it. It was kind of left to the approach of the particular individual. So we decided we wanted a bit more rigor there as well, just so that, again, so there's a common approach across the BAs that were there. So again, we set up that kind of practice there. So it went hand in hand with the project management practice. And again, it was nice that they realized that, just because you're BA doesn't mean you want to be a project manager when you grow up, and keeping those two separate. So you weren't going from one to the other. It was you had two distinct people in those positions. So yes, we set up the practice there. And again, using the training and the use cases and the user stories practice from yours, and the requirements training as well. I used that with the BAs that were there, so that they could see that kind of, to me, is invaluable role playing. Again, I cannot stress that enough with people, to seeing that back and forth. Oh, right, okay, so that's a really great approach. Or I like how you asked that question. I like how you framed that or phrased that. So it was really, invaluable for them to see how it was done. And again, not necessarily, not looking like I wasn't their boss. So it's not like it was coming from me in terms of I'm telling them what to do. It's, okay, seeing a third party, and this is how they do it. And, so that always helps. You're not coming in as if you're trying to tell someone how they should be doing something. They're seeing it from someone that's very well known in the industry and very good at the practice. So it's easier. It's a softer way to bring things in and to train people, and getting that element of training.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way, because it can be, especially if they have more experience in that company, right?
Yes.
Like, you're you can feel like the outsider coming in to kind of just create a new way of doing things. But if you can position it to like an industry standard, or to a third, like as you said, a third party.
Absolutely. And it's to me, again, it's you have that the experience behind you for someone to go and see and look what you've been involved in. Again, it's it's someone that is very professional and very well known in the industry. So it's, to me, it's hey, I'm just passing on training that's already offered from someone else. So then again, it's, oh, okay, cool. You're just sharing what you know with me.
Yeah.
Instead of telling me how I should do it.
Right. I love that. So is there anything else you want to share about that before we kind of jump forward or to whatever your next milestone might be?
No, I think I'm good.
Yeah. So what came next?
So I really liked working there, but I still felt like I needed to push myself, and I wasn't growing in the way that I wanted to within my career, in terms of having bigger projects to work on and real challenges, challenging projects and learning new techniques and learning new technologies and things like that. So I went to work for a financial services company in the tech center in just south of Denver. And that was probably where my biggest jump in career occurred. So it was, it was kind of trial by fire. We came in and there was a massive change that they were going through at the moment, understanding their customer journey and really revamping the way that they interacted with their customers. So understanding with the personas and things and the real, like, how are your customers coming to you and what are they looking for now? And that was that real time where, the whole millennial generation, where you're really having to focus and change the way that you operate to meet the needs of a huge growing population, and down to investments and the way that you interact with them and how that they wish to interact with technology and kind of what they're looking for. So it was just an amazing experience for me to work with just such a driven group of people. And it was also, every day was a stretch. I mean, it's not saying there weren't days of, and there were days of panic. I mean, to be absolutely honest with you, there's sometimes where you're working and learning new techniques where you're like, okay, or you're working with stakeholders that are, at 10 levels above you, that you're just reining it in and figure out how you operate and how best to approach them and things. So yeah, I loved it.
Yeah.
I mean,
it sounds like that they had quite sophisticated or mature way of doing what they were doing, right? So where in the past you were creating the standards, in this case you were learning how they wanted to do both. It sounds like business analysis and some product management possibly. So
absolutely, yes.
That could have been a big shift, but also a great learning opportunity. Right?
Well, and it was a huge shift. And oddly enough, you brought up the word sophisticated. The project was called Sophisticated Client. So yeah, it was, and it was looking at your products and are your products still appropriate for everyone that's out there? Are you addressing all the needs of your clients and things like that? So yes, it was a massive growth, but there was an element of rigor there, and then there wasn't. So when I started, I said, okay, so where are all the BAs in our group? And they're like, okay, well, you're it. And I was part of the PMO at that time, before they decentralized the PMO. And I was part of the team that was basically sent out, like if there was a need across the organization. So you would have departmental business analysts, and that would kind of your SMEs within the groups. And then we were a group that would come in and provide project management and business analysis and things like that. So, whatever the need was, that would be prioritized, and then you would be dispatched to help out whichever team needed help. So this was a massive program going on across the company and across many different teams. So it was, depending on who you spoke to, there was a different way of doing things as a business analyst. So again, I worked with the team to get all of the BAs from across the organization together in kind of a BA forum so that we could look at how we did things across the board. Were there ways of doing things in one team that was better than another? And not just the rigor across the organization, it was also sharing of technology, sharing of the knowledge that each of these SMEs had. So you had a lot of business analysts that worked as product owners, that had such deep understanding of the technologies and reporting and things like that, that there was no way that as a generalist across the organization, you just popping in to help people, that you could ever have that knowledge unless you were kind of working hand in hand with the teams. Financial services can be an incredibly steep learning curve. So it was interesting to work with them and partner with them, and then have those kind of relationships set up, so that as you were working across the teams, that there was some kind of continuity across of what your end results were, what your artifacts and things like that. But also there was that kind of that teamwork, so that if you were, okay, you're going to be put in this team for a little while to work on this project, it's like, oh gosh, I don't even know this technology. How am I going to get up to speed? You had those relationships with those other BAs in order to learn that, and you had those relationships. And okay, great, yes, I'm happy to help you out. Hey, let me give you some background on these folks, or the technology you were using, or kind of anything you would need. So it was a real partnership across the BAs after probably about a year or so of being there.
Yeah, it sounds like wherever you've gone, you've helped bring the BAs together and really been a champion for the role within your organization. Does that land with you?
Yeah, it does. I mean,
yeah, because not everybody does that, right? Some people would get into that role and just be like, I'm going to worry about my thing, right? But you kind of went and brought all those BAs together across all those different places, and it also created a lot of great relationships for you too, to kind of get through whatever that learning curve was when you needed to.
Well, and that's I think was when you're at the panic stations of it's anyone under sort of 5 years at the company, they're like, oh, they're new. You're like, oh. Okay, that's not at all daunting. And it's even after 3 years there, there's parts of the business that it was like it's completely new territory. So you were always learning, and each project you're working on was just could be something completely new. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was, you need those relationships, but also I think to me, there's always something to learn, and it's fascinating. And I think because I love what I do, and I don't ever see myself doing anything different until I can work for myself and raise dog, have a doggy daycare or something. I think it's something that you want to make sure that you're building those kind of relationships and learning new stuff at your company. And the only way you do that is through the other folks in your team. And I find, in teams, and business analysts, I find, are the most helpful and friendly people, no matter where you go. Mm. And, they always want to share. They always want to help train people. And I remember when I was at this company, that's where you and I finally met face to face at IIB. And some of it was off the back of your book about, becoming a BA. And there was a gentleman at the company that I worked for who was very interested in it, but didn't have, he's like, oh, I'm not sure if I had the skill set. And I'm like, oh, it just was like perfect timing. You were speaking there, and one of the things we were talking about were transferable skills. I'm like, oh yes, and you'd asked for, at the beginning of the meeting, you asked for a volunteer. So I volunteered him, and he had to go up, but bless his heart, he's not at all shy, thankfully. Yeah, he had to go up front with you and work through this. And you said, and you're like, okay, so let's get into what you do and understand what your transferable skills, because he was quite a high up manager in our help desk. He's very technical, but he had to work with the C-suite quite a few. Quite often there were people that they would call him on his mobile to get help and things like that. So he was very personal, and you did this kind of role play with him and questioned him on some of the things that he could use as transferable skills. And it gave him such a boost and such confidence. And then within probably 4 months, he took a BA role at the company as a trial to see if it worked out. And then it worked out really well, and that was it for him.
Oh, that's awesome. I always didn't know that. Yeah, I was like piecing together the memory, because I've done that at several chapters, right, where we pull somebody up and prove that there's always some transferable skills. But that's amazing, and what a great gift that you gave to him too, to kind of give him that push.
Yeah, I'm sure he didn't think it at the time, but but luckily it worked out, and he did an amazing job, and he loved it. And it was just needed that push to give him the confidence to understand that, oh, okay, here are my transferable skills, and there are quite a few.
Yeah, that's awesome. So that is the work of a true champion for you. So what came next? Yeah, or what has come next, right?
Wow, yeah, I think we knew we wanted to move back to the East Coast. We wanted to be by the water, and Denver was not at all near the water. So we started
Same reason
planning.
I moved. Yeah.
Yeah, and it just worked out. My company was bought out by another company. I opted out. I opted to take a package, and it happened just around the time we were moving to Maine. And I thought, well, we'll just figure it out and, head out and just see what happens. So we are in Portland, Maine at the moment. I am, again, in financial services. I work in Portsmouth, New Hampshire for a lovely bank. And again, there it was, for me at that point, I think there's certain things that you find out as you progress in your career, what you want to do. So I actually have two jobs at the moment. So I'm working at a bank, and I'm also, I start next month as an instructor for UC Irvine in their BA certificate.
Mhm.
So I think one of the things that I found out was that I love teaching what I know, for what it's worth. That kind of trajectory of setting up a practice, teaching people what I do, or being not what I do necessarily, but being the BA skills, because there are certain skills that I think, soft skills that are great, and personality that you really need if you want to be a business analyst. And then then everything else outside of that you can learn.
Mhm.
So I think that one of those things as I was looking for a job is one, the team that you work with, because you can spend a lot of time at work, but also the breadth of the projects that you're working on. Is there some new technology? I love the idea of UI and UX, so learning that and other elements that I could learn. So we're working quite closely where I am now with the UI and UX teams, and also working with junior BAs as well. So I think that in partnership with kind of teaching, just since being an instructor that was that next step for me, and just see where that takes me. I'd love to be a full-time instructor at some point. Again, I love to get people excited about the role, but I don't ever want to get too far away from it, because there's, I really do enjoy what I do. So
Yeah.
it's getting involved in the community now. I think, where I am now is not as big a BA community as Denver or London. So it's finding those pockets and getting involved with folks, because I think it is quite a social role. Even though I consider myself an introvert, and I think, I know quite a few BAs that are introverts, we are still quite social, oddly. So, I know it's a misconception that I'd heard in a webinar once that in order to be a good BA, you have to be an extrovert. And that really worried me,
Yeah.
that people might get that wrong message. And in my last company, we had one of our UX designers is an incredible introvert, but he can be very social, and he's an amazing guy. So I had him come in and give a whole thing about that you can be incredibly introverted all you like, but you can still do this role and do this role very well. It's just, it's just how you set up your time and your schedule, so that if you do need that time to decompress, that you have that. So yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I think that was the only other thing that I wanted to pass on as well.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I'm also an introvert. I have a video on being an introverted BA, because I get the same question. Like, somebody must have heard that same message somewhere, and like it created a little bit of a spiral in the profession, I think. And it's like, no, like totally works. But you do, because you do need to be able to talk to people and be a great communicator and all of those things. But introverts can still do that too. It's about where you get your energy from, right?
Right.
And yeah, today happens to be a day that I have a bunch of back-to-back things, but normally, I do not allow my schedule to have back-to-back meetings, because I know I will be just completely depleted at the end of the day.
Yes.
So, and that is a sign of an introvert.
Yeah.
But then when I'm in the things, I'm great and I love it. So
yeah. Oh yeah. You fully get energy from it. It's just after it, So I think we've had two reasons here, because we have so many Zoom meetings and there's such a pull on the network. At work, we tend to stagger our meetings, so they're not starting bang on the hour, and that has actually been a really good way to have that decompression time. Start at 15 minutes after the hour, or end 10 minutes early, and then you just have that time to because a lot of times I'm taking notes and things like that, so I have time to. I love writing notes, because to me, I can't type fast enough anyway. But so I have time to sort of decompress, transcribe my notes if I need to electronically and
Yeah.
get ready for the next one.
Nice. Well, anything else that you would like to share? Like, I guess the question I would like to ask you, because you've had such this amazing, I'm doing this because I'm picturing
Yeah.
UK to Denver back to Maine, right? But like, that's just the geographical aspect of it. But, you've had an amazing career progression and kind of different flavors. What would you advise to somebody who would like to follow in your footsteps in terms of moving into these more leadership type roles?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, well, for anyone really, is understanding where your strengths are, understanding where, and one thing I've really had to learn that is not at all natural to me is putting yourself out there in terms of letting people know what you've done, what you've accomplished. And to me, and I don't know if it's the introvert in me or, the self-deprecation, but it's really difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I am the type of person where I am happy to be part of a team, and I don't have to shout about, what I've done. I'm happy to support other people. And you're doing the hard work and getting things done, but I'm happy for them to take the kudos for it. And that is going to be one of your biggest things that will sabotage you in a minute if that's the way in which you operate. I hate to say it, but it's really, you have to toot your own horn. So that's one of the things that, again, in England, it's a different way of doing things, and being a female, I can't deny that part of it as well. That you have to look at the way that you present yourself and look at the way that you work within teams to be considered, especially in financial services, because it is a male-dominated industry. To me, I've had to really, and I'm always working on it, whether it be interviews or what have you, it's how you frame things and how you quickly get to the point, and also being aware of the working styles of other people, personality types. I had not an issue, but it was like I felt like one of my bosses, were just not on the same page in our communication styles. And like, we'd speak and I'm like, okay, I feel like I've understood you. And I'd come back and she's like, no, that's just not quite it. And we finally did some personality testing, emergenetics, and we published it across the our team. So you could see where people were on the scale. And I found I'm very much in the weeds. I love the details, that kind of thing. And she was blue sky. And I'm like, oh gosh, okay. So then at least, then it was just like a light bulb. And I said, okay, how can I communicate better with you? Because we're at a disconnect. Now I want to understand how I can communicate and get you what you need on a level that you need it. So we came to a point where she's like, all right, great. I don't need all that detail. I know that you're doing what you should be doing. So this is what you do. So again, it's understanding, if you, as you're trying to get to that progression, is how you're communicating with people and adjusting your style and understanding that they may not want to be in details with you. And a lot of BAs are very detail oriented.
I think especially as you start to climb up those levels, right? Like you take ownership of more of those details, but you don't have to communicate all of those details because you will lose your audience. Yeah.
Yes, very much so. Their eyes have glazed over.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's been a big thing for me as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So thinking about how you promote your work and your wins and sharing kind of your own kudos essentially, and also how you're communicating with other people. Those are great
Absolutely. Things. And don't, one of the things I've noticed in the US, and I know it's not the same everywhere, but certifications are big. It's funny because before I decided to get my CBAP, I read you had a really good article on it about whether, is this something I really need to do? And I know you kind of weighed that up, whether you really needed to do it. And actually my instructor role came off the back that I actually have a PMI certification for the BA and the IIBA. So, and there are not a lot of people that do both. And I wanted to see what the difference was in between the two of them. And that's actually what's, swayed it for me to be able to teach this course. But certifications in some areas are big. And, I finished my degree for myself and literally only finished it last year. But it's, it doesn't necessarily need to be formal education in that way. But, always learning something new, not just to become relevant, but it's more so that you're keeping yourself sharp. And there's techniques you learn from everything. Like, I'm not necessarily sure that I want to be a UX designer, but I love elements of it. And I love some of the things that come from it, from the knowledge that you have, the research and things like that can really help you in your role. and really help you in, because the UX team where I am now is incredibly swamped, and there's always something new for them to work on, so they don't always have time to work on some of the things that you have. That might be smaller projects, so it's nice that you can have that handoff, and it's, you know, they're more than happy to work with me and say, okay, great, you've made a really good start here. Let me just give you some advice on how to tweak that so that that's going to give you what you need, and we actually don't need to be actively involved.
Yeah. So what point in your career did you get your certification?
I'd started with the PMI PBA, probably in when it first came out. I'm going to say, is that 2014?
Sounds about right.
Yeah. So
so that was right after your coursework with us, or kind of
Yes.
alongside. So you used the coursework to get that one. Yeah.
It was. And I literally did that as part of the beta. And then I did the CBAP probably 2 years afterwards. Yeah. And I really did. I sort of read yours, and that it kind of put me off at first, only because not that you put me off of it, but it was, I knew the level of rigor and the kind of the trickiness to the questions. Yeah. So I'm like, all right, I know I have to, it's not that it put me off, but I knew I had to have the time to do the proper amount of study and preparation for it. So I'm like, all right, I'll put that off while I, you know.
And for people listening, I just want to emphasize too, that this was after you were already in BA leadership roles. Like, so it was where I see the misconceptions is that, like, I need the CBAP to get started, or, you know, like I need that certification in order to even start doing the role. But I think doing it, like I did mine a bit later in my career, you did it kind of mid-career, like then it starts to open up more opportunities, right? But it didn't hold you back from getting to where you're going. Yeah.
No, and especially starting out, you know, we have one of the BAs where I work now, wanted her CCBA and went for it. It made no difference in her career in terms of, we're not going to promote you based on it, but it shows a level of commitment to your career once you're already in it, that it's something that you're continuing your training, you're continuing your progression in the career. So I think it's more, and not saying that there aren't companies out there that you know, hire based on that, but for me, you know, what I've seen at any rate is that it's something that shows that you're dedicated to your career. It's something that you want to carry on in that profession, and it's something that you want to add to your own, you know, you want to add an element of rigor to what you do.
Yeah. And just because I want to make sure I heard you right, did you say that just this past year you finished like what would be considered an undergraduate degree?
I graduated in November of 2019.
Okay. So I get that question a lot as well about, like, I don't have an undergraduate degree, like, can I be a BA? So you've also proven that to be totally possible.
Absolutely. And really, I only got my degree for myself. It was a milestone for me. I'm like, all right, I'm turning 50. I want to have my degree. Yeah. I've been studying for 30 years. And so.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you. You've been incredibly generous with your time and your thoughts and your shares. And I think this is going to inspire a lot of people. And so thank you so much, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Yeah.